Hello. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and I've got 3 kiddos. They are 10, 8, and 4. They're a major reason I'm here. One, because I'm not perfect at this, so I'm not here to deliver God's ultimate word on technology and fix you. In fact, I don't even want you to take that mindset towards your children. I don't believe your kids are problems to fix. I believe they are people to love. But they're a major reason for me being here. I am passionate about seeing them raised in a world where tech defaults to safety, and in a world where we have words to express this idea that we are using technology from the hope we have in Christ, not for hope. So that's a major motivation. We'll talk a little bit more about them, but just like your kids, my kids are very unique. They are wired in a specific way, and therefore they are attracted to certain parts of technology based on their personality and the way God has designed them. Owen in the middle is 10, and he's your classic type A firstborn. He likes organization, structure, and rules. He's been keeping a calendar since he was 4. He is our family police officer. He walked in early today to ensure that his 8-year-old brother had properly cleaned the bathroom. Like Henry cleaned the bathroom, Owen comes and does a check afterwards and let Henry know the drain was not clean. So that leads us to Henry, who is about as present a human as you've ever met. It's a lovely gift, as long as he can make it to adulthood. Henry walked into my house this summer with 1 shoe on. And I said, Henry, where's your other shoe? And he looks down, he looks at me, he goes, I don't know. And it's not like I'm looking for it. He's like, you can't change the past. The future hasn't happened yet. I'm a kid with 1 shoe. Love me as I am. Like, that is Henry to a T, and it is delightful. But it could not be, you couldn't pick a more frustrating personality for Owen. Like, he doesn't understand. And while Owen is bigger, Henry is more laissez-faire, and he will use that to his advantage if Owen ever gets a little too far out of line. Hadley it's hard to explain Hadley. She is dynamic, I think would be the word that would describe her. If her entire life is jazz hands and glitter, basically. And when I let her dress herself, it looks like a unicorn's migraine. It's like polka dots and rainbows, and like there's a lot of like sparkle going on, and nothing really matches, but like it all is thematically purple. So they're a lot of fun, but they're not the same person, and I can't treat them like the same person. And that's something as we head into this conversation that we do need to know. Another thing I want you to know is that I was a middle school teacher for a decade in the public school system. I am passionate about seeing young people reach their full potential. So while I speak to parents and mentors and educators and designers, all in the tech field, my passion is always making sure that we're talking about, are we raising up young people to achieve their full potential, and specifically their potential in Christ, what they're made to achieve. So I'm passionate about that conversation. It's why I speak to parents. I have been informed that a bunch of you work in the tech industry. Thanks for coming tonight. If you work for Microsoft, there actually is an ERG in the family ERG that I did right before Christmas on very similar subject. So that's not something I usually look for, but someone heard one of these, pitched it to the ERG head, and they're like, sure, let's do it in like 6 days. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. I can totally be ready during Christmas season on no notice. But you can check that out, share it with your friends if you are there, and if you're not, bring me to your company's ERG and we'll make it happen. My third and final passion is what we are talking about today. We're going to be talking about how can I equip you with 3 things. First, the understanding that there are 2 types of tech. Then, how can we know if that tech is healthy? You will know it before you leave here today. And then how do we make it safe at home? The goal, again, is not to give you impervious walls that will stop your child from ever making a mistake with technology, but instead to give you conversational tools to equip you for those parenting wins, because that's what I want to see you get. So, with no further ado, let's start with the 2 types of tech. There are 2 types of tech. There's tool tech and there's drool tech. These are blanks on your page. If you're not a blank filler outer person, you're welcome to sit here patiently, maintain eye contact, and we have a fully filled out form for you at the end, if that's more your styles. But as we go, feel free to, the reason I don't do it is people just read the words and they can't track along. So I'm giving you a spot for notes, if that helps you now. Questions at the end. So if you want, jot down questions, I'll tackle all the others. I already got one about Ray-Ban and Facebook, so feel free to let loose at the end. I may or may not have something informative. But tool and drool tech is important because it comes down to how they're actually designed. Tool tech is designed to help us create. That's important because we're the ones driving the work. It operates at the pace of real life. You cannot get overstimulated using tool tech. It is going to help you leverage your abilities and passions to accomplish a task that you've set for yourself. You want to make a movie, you want to make a game, you want to make a paper, you want to make, I don't know, a drawing of a fairy. This technology will help you do that. However, there's Drool Tech, and Drool Tech is here to help you consume. It doesn't make it bad, but it is designed differently. Drool Tech is designed to take your time, focus, and money. That is its job. And it's really, really good at it. And we want to make sure we know that when we're designing tech, as we go into a project, just heads up, what are we making here? Like, what's our goal? What's our revenue system on this? Like, how are we going about the design process? And when our children are using it, we want to spot it and help your children. Your kids as young as 5 and 6 can spot it. They can recognize it either behaviorally or just for what the thing is, and having that conversation is helpful at all ages. So, 8th grade teacher in me is coming out. Oh, I didn't tell you, I was a middle school teacher. I said public school. You do need to know this about me. 8th grade is important because 7th graders can't handle sarcasm. Like, you make too hard a joke and they cry. 9th graders know what adults want to hear, so if you ask them how they're doing, like, they'll still lie to you, but they'll lie in the way they think you want them to lie. Whereas 8th graders don't care. They'll lie, but they'll be like, I'm going to lie to you now because it benefits me. And also, I'm not doing today's classwork. And like, I can work with that. So that's, I speak to, when I'm speaking to you, I'm actually speaking to the 8th grader in you today. So I'm going to need you to tap into that, because I know that all of you are like, all your lives are shiny and perfect and nothing could ever go wrong. I'm going to need the 8th grader to speak up and be a little snarkier than that. And the second thing is I can't get away from it. So pop quiz. Would a nail gun be tool or Drool Tech? To practice this, I know you want to shout out, but don't, because I'm going to have you actually turn to your elbow partner. This is another thing we're doing. So find someone you can bump with an elbow. You notice you have an empty chair next to you, you're going to need to find a buddy. So find a buddy. All right. So I'm going to put one up. You're going to turn to your neighbor. You got 10 seconds to say what you think it is and why. And that will prep you, because at the end of each of these sections, I'm going to have you do it again to like practice through some of the content we just discussed. So turn to your neighbor. Tool or Drool Tech. Go. All right, 3, 2, 1. Raise a hand. You think it's tool? Go. You think it's Drool? Go. All right, so this would be Tool Tech. It wasn't a trap. I wasn't trying to be cute. I just wanted you to see, like, literally it's a tool. It only does what you tell it to. It's basically a fancy hammer, and a hammer is just a fancy rock tied to a stick. So at the end of the day, you want to put something metal through something wood. Nail gun's going to help you do that. It stops when you stop. We'll get a little more complicated. How about a podcast? And this is really close to home because I run one of these. Gospel Tech has a podcast. Episode, I think, 208 dropped this week. So I'm being very... This hurts me just a little bit. Turn your neighbor, go. All right, 3, 2, 1. Think it's Tool Tech, raise a hand. Think it's Drool Tech, raise a hand. Yeah, undecided, a couple of you. All right, hands down. It gets a little more convoluted here. In this case, we have to talk about what do we mean. Me recording a podcast at the pace of real life to get information out to people is in fact Tool Tech. It's not setting any goals for me. It's not making me do anything. It's no behavioral hooks, right? It's just me recording information, putting it out. However, almost every platform I'm aware of, except my website, has some kind of algorithm driving users. So they go, oh, you like Nathan Sutherland, maybe you should listen to, and it's gonna try to pitch you other ideas. Why? Retention. Wants to take your time, focus, money. Podcasts in that case are Drool Tech. Does it make them bad? No. But we need to know what it is. We need to recognize that this thing is trying to distract me and that I have other things to do. So I'll listen to the one podcast I meant to and walk away, or whatever your system is. But do know that podcasts as a platform are probably Drool Tech. So educational shows your child loves watching might be super educational. That's awesome. Almost all of those are going to be on a platform that is intended for retention. We just need to recognize that for what it is, because if you're going to have a fight about technology, it's probably Drool Tech. Like, not a lot of kids yelling at their parents about email. So how about news feeds? This could be from your favorite social media platform, or from the apps that you use, or just swiping left on your iPhone and reading whatever pops up there. Turn to your neighbor, go. I guess you'd technically be swiping right on the iPhone. Okay, 3, 2, One. Tool tech, raise of hand. Tool tech, raise of hand. Okay, all right, we're catching the vision. Excellent. Now, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it has the word feed in it. And if there's a feed involved, there's a really good chance it's Drool Tech, it's personalized, it's micro-targeted. You and your spouse opening the same app will get different information because they're really not trying to inform you as an American citizen. They're trying to retain you. They're going to do that in one of two ways, make you super happy or make you super mad. That's going to make you go to the internet because you're either super right or you super hate this other information. That is going to drive engagement, which inevitably drives clicks, which inevitably drives revenue. So while that's a bummer, like you can still use it well and be informed, but while I use podcasts and news feeds, it's done best, in a plurality, get a lot of information on the same subject and then synthesize that and apply it. And if you're not doing that, then you're with the rest of America. Our average view time on an article is under a minute. And most of us don't click. We just read the headline, infer what we already assumed was happening, and then go to the water cooler and say, did you guys know? And share that lovely tidbit, which is the whole reason we opened the app in the first place, because we were so anxious about writing that email or report of the actual hard work we were trying to do. How about a computer? This could be a personal computer, a kid's computer, a one-to-one device delivered by a school. Turn to your neighbor, tool or drool. All right, 3, 2, 1. Tool tech, let's see those hands. Drool tech, what do you say? Whoa, so you're like, I don't want to say it. It is really hard though. And this is the conversation we're trying to get down to, is it's not necessarily about the hardware. It's not about if it plugs into a wall. It's not if it has a screen or blue light. That doesn't determine. It's what is it designed to do. The perfect example I witnessed for myself was in an 8th grade classroom teaching language arts. I taught 8th grade language arts. If you ever want to just default to a young boy not loving you on sight, it's be their 8th grade language arts teacher. But I really leaned into it. So January, they just had Christmas break. Beforehand, we're reading things like The Gift of the Magi and just about how love is so beautiful. Even if you have nothing, you have each other, right? And then January comes in and I'm just like, no, it's raining. It's dark when you show up. It's dark before you leave. And you're probably on my wrestling team. So I'm going to bum you out hard this month. We did a tone mood unit. We read To Build a Fire by Jack London. If you're not familiar with it, a dude freezes to death in the Yukon. We read Little Matchstick Girl. If you're not familiar with it, a little girl freezes to death in the street. We read Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. If you're not familiar with it, a guy murders his roommate. This was our story set. And in the middle of this, just the doldrums of it, right? It's heavy, it's dark, and the whole point is why are you so bummed out? And it's not just because it's 8th grade. Don't worry, I'll tell all the kids, don't peak in 8th grade. Life gets better. But because the author's doing something here, and this is important and it's powerful, and then our district had just gone one-to-one devices. Every kid in the classroom has one. They have to go click the share folder, click language arts, click on To Build a Fire. And in the middle of this, a notification pops down and said, did you know this computer has Minecraft? Now, if you take an 8th grade brain and offer them guy freezing to death and Minecraft, which one wins out just in a typical day? Yeah, Minecraft wins out. I have a picture, not in this presentation. 26 of 30 kids in a classroom on Minecraft, and I promise the teacher in that classroom did not say, everyone please open up Minecraft. Right? The computers are a portal to technology, and it can do either. And by the way, since I'm speaking to people in the tech world, please someone make an educational platform. We don't have that yet. Would someone please make a platform that only does tool tech, that helps kids design and create and make and not go to Google for their research papers? Oh, please stop Googling your research papers. We need that thing. And if you wanted to have AI on it to teach kids a sensible use of that, okay, I could be convinced. But we don't have that platform right now. Computers are still the Wild West. They're very much like our smartphones. They do whatever we tell them to. And when left to their own devices, they tend to push us drool tech. So to break this down, things like Microsoft Word, things like AutoCAD, these would be tool tech. None of you have ever at 11 p.m. when just setting your $1,000 alarm clock on your nightstand and are about to roll over, get a notification and you check your phone and it says, hey, you awake? And it's Microsoft Word. And it's hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I thought maybe we could write a haiku. Microsoft Word never says, hey, did you know Sally down the street, she already started her book and it's way better than yours. Here's a snippet just to make you feel terrible about yourself. That's not Microsoft Word's job. It doesn't care if you write every day or once a year. It's just there to help you share and edit and save and produce the content you want to produce. Now, I'm not going to say they'll never do that, but please don't get any ideas from this. Microsoft production people looking at you. All right. So they're like, that's genius. Why do we have that? Oh, and I weep. Don't do it. It's tool tech, and it's great, and it's wonderful what it does. If we compare that to the four most common formats for Drool tech, it's going to be social media, shows and movies, music, video games. Music falls into that again because of the platforms. If you're using a record where it plays 4 songs and then stops, and you have to manually go over and move the needle and flip it over, cool. That's great. You can do that. I could be convinced that could be tool tech, but when it's algorithm driven and you ask for one song and it plays you the 11 in that album and then it just kicks you into something else and it's doing that without your input or feedback, it just is what it is. That's tool tech, and it's lovely sometimes, and sometimes it's horrific because you left a perfectly fine album on for your child and then you came back and you're like, what are those words? Shut it down. So we have these 4 types, and their goals are always take your time, your focus, and your money. You came to have a good time. You came to enjoy yourself. You came to blow off some steam. And they're like, yeah, that's fine, but a little bit longer than you intended or cost you a little more than you wanted to pay. And for the next 4 slides, I'm going to run you through how that happens. This is very important. I don't spend a ton of time on it. My wife was like, you need to cut off 12 of those slides. So this is the pared down version. My wife, by the way, phenomenal writer and much brighter than me. So any edits she makes stands. But how does it work when we talk about Drool tech? I want to run through this because it's not voodoo. It's not dark magic. It's not, just inevitable. This is by design, and it doesn't have to be. We can make products differently. So it starts with operant conditioning. 1938, B.F. Skinner wanted to train a rat to press a lever on command. Sound goes off, light turns on, rat should press the lever and get a treat, which worked for a bit until the rat didn't want the treat. So then he electrified the floor. Rat freaks out, bounces around, bumps into the lever, electricity goes off, and the rat figures out pretty quick, it doesn't matter if I want a treat, I don't want to get electrocuted. So we ended up tying in a behavior that's desired with either a reward or a punishment. That goes with the Hebbian theory of learning. Dr. Donald Hebb realized, when we repeat a behavior, the neurons that fire together wire together. So we get good at habits by doing habits. This is what your PE teachers always told you, right? Practice makes permanent, or whatever they said. That is, in fact, true at a brain level. To the point where we now understand that neuroplasticity is a thing. This is a huge deal. We thought for a long time with just pure behavioralism that you are a computer made of genetics. You can only do what your genes tell you to. We now know that's not true. On a brain level, because your brain will adapt to your behaviors, good or bad. A simple example would be your alarm goes off and you snooze. Right, and you're more likely to snooze until the point where you don't even hear the alarm anymore. Your brain's like, listen, we're not listening to that. I get it. I'll just tune that out for you, and you'll sleep for an hour and be late because you won't even get the chance to hit the snooze button. I'm just overriding you. That's true, but we also have the fact that your brain physically adapts, but your genetics can adapt. And we won't go into that today, but epigenetics are a thing. We now understand a little bit of this idea that there's a tag that can turn on and off based on your behavior. And that's nuts. So the example I'll use, if you want a brain, or I want a book on it, The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Deutsch, in the first chapter, he talks about a lady who had a surgery. As part of this surgery, she took a medication. It scorched both of her inner ears. The part of your brain that tells you you're standing upright, now gone. She no longer has this part of her body. She has crippling vertigo. She can't drive. She can't dress. She cannot live independently. If she lays down, she feels like she's falling through the floor. Doctors go, hey, listen, we're really sorry, but there's nothing we can do to help. You no longer have the organ in your body that's supposed to tell you you're facing upright. A couple years go by and a doctor comes, hey, can I do an experimental procedure with you? She's like, yes, anything. He goes, great, we're going to put a device in your mouth, and it's going to stipple your tongue with electric charges. You lean forward, it'll stipple the front. You lean back, stipple the back, left, right, etc. We'll train you on it for an hour. The first time, she got something like 3 to 5 minutes of independent standing afterwards. They kept training her on it. After a year, she'd go for an hour. After multiple years, she no longer needed the device. She could completely stand, drive, work independently. She no longer had vertigo. She also no longer had her inner ear. She didn't have the thing that you need to be able to stand upright because her brain was able to adapt the tongue to that process through repeated stimulation. Now, if you can take a part of your body to just simply replace another part of your body that it was not designed to do, what happens when we train those parts of your body to do exactly what they're supposed to do, but do it to extremes? This is what Nira Eyal's talking about in his book, Hooked. By the way, this is not a cautionary tale. Many of you have probably read this book. The subtitle, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. It's a how-to book. It's not a like, be worried, people are doing this. It's like, hey, you want to sell a lot of stuff? Here's how you do it. The basics. You need a trigger, external or internal. So notification or boredom. Then we need them to do something. Go to that website, play that game, get engaged, comment on something, watch a video. Then they're going to get a variable reward. This could be as like on the nose as like a loot drop in a game. But it could be something like, oh, they get a comment from someone else. It doesn't have to be a good comment. Even angry trolls show you exist in the internet's ether. That is still feedback. They're still invested, which means the next time that trigger comes, the more likely they are to engage it. That's concerning because when we have this as a loop, you'll see it doesn't say how long. It's not like, well, as long as they do it for 5 minutes. Could be a 4-second interruption from a buzz in your smartwatch. It's a behavioral training loop to get you to form a habit, to convince you, frankly, that you need something that you never wanted. If you wanted it, they wouldn't have to train you to do it. The point is you didn't ask for it, and they want you to be able to do this on a regular basis. Examples of what these trainings are. If it has notifications, likes, swipe to refresh. By the way, swipes to refresh is based off a slot machine. The information could just show up. It could refresh every 3 minutes or whatever, but the polling, the waiting, and the delivery is part of your body's, triggering your body's reward system to keep you for that 1 extra minute. I'll explain why that matters. Infinite scroll, feeds, followers and stats, points, rewards, basically anything that operates on the fear of missing out. If there's a chance that something's happening that you're not there for, this is your child's number one argument for being on a smartphone. But all my friends are out there and I know they're having the best time possible. And you're like, they're really not there. They're like, but I'm certain of it. That's being leveraged. That is intentional. That is by design. To use that idea of like why the poll to refresh, why it matters to get you to poll one more time. Many of you might already be aware of this, but let's humor me. 2.5 million monthly users on YouTube. If YouTube was able to get 1% of those to stay for 1 minute, okay, so we have 2.5 million and I only want 1%. They came on to watch, how do I fix my air conditioning unit? Or in this weather, how do I fix my heater? We're going to stay 1 extra minute. Here, watch this short. 1 minute. They'd get 18,000 days of additional viewing. That's enough time to watch all 10 seasons of Friends 343,000 times. 1% for 1 minute. Now, last time they posted that stat was 2016. And something like 70% of their views came from the suggested bar, which means 70% of those 2.5 million came to figure out their heater and stayed to figure out how that squirrel got through that maze. Which in itself isn't bad. Like, well, why does it matter? Because that's worth a ton of money. And the motivation then isn't give you what you want, just convince you want something you didn't know you wanted yet and get you to buy that extra minute or 10 minutes or hour. Like, they're not going to complain if you stay longer. But the reason design like this matters is because we can be convinced we need things we don't want. That's our main concern. My personal favorite example of this is Snapchat. If you know any young people, it's actually on the rise again, which is weird when I'm doing my high school and middle school talks. I hear Snapchat more than I hear TikTok. If you ask any teen who uses Snapchat, have you ever kept a streak alive? A streak is where you basically DM someone and they DM you back. You now have a streak of 1. You have to do that every 24 hours to keep your streak alive. I had an 8th grader at the end of a talk right before Christmas who showed me his phone on the way out. He had a streak of over 1,300. That means he'd every single day use Snapchat with the same friend since 4th grade. Behavioral training is powerful. This is a feature that exactly 0 people asked for. No one was like, oh man, I love Instagram's DMs, but could they like put a timer on it? And like follow me with my friends and make sure that I message them every 24 hours or it expires and it ruins our friendship. Could you make a feature like that? Like that'd be great. No one asked for that. But you ask a teenager, hey, have you ever kept a streak alive when you should have been eating? When you should have been studying, when you should have been sleeping, or you should have been talking with others. You were around other people and instead you kept the streak alive. All of them will say yes. And if you look at what those 4 are, like that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have sleep and food, You have to have friendship and intimacy, and you have to know you have a future. And you are giving up something you need to get to something you didn't even ask for. Which, by the way, giving up what you need to get to what you want is the definition of an addiction. When you give up what you need to get to what you want, that is textbook addiction. That's concerning, but it's not just kids. Like, I know kids these days, and get off my lawn, but how many times a day do you think an adult checks his or her phone? Any guesses? I know, yeah, too many. I get it. Yeah, it's a couple. Yeah, it's right around 300. 350 times a day. This isn't, by the way, the number of times you touch your phone. That's over 2,000. The number of times in a day you absent-mindedly check your pockets and then stop in the hall to check everything when you realize it's not in this pocket. You're like, oh, it's in my coat. Oh, I can breathe again, right? Like, I had a moment of freak out. That's once every 3 waking minutes. That is not you doing it because you want to. That's a compulsion. You do it every 3 waking minutes. You check your phone, you physically look at it. That is a trained behavior. And that is powerful when we think about what we are doing to our brains with that. It's the same with young people. They average 8.5 hours a day on drool tech. That isn't Zoom calls, Teams, research for school, etc. That's entertainment tech. At 2 hours a day, the likelihood of depression and suicidal ideation increases 22%. It goes up to over 60% at 5 hours a day. And we're averaging 8. Which could explain, by the way, why 3 in 5 teenage girls in 2022 said they experienced prolonged bouts of sadness and loneliness. 3 in 5. Boys weren't that much better. They were 1 in 3. When 33% of our youth experiencing that is the good number, that's concerning. Reduced attention span, academic success, and brain drain are all tied to this. I am producing actively a sheet on this. I gave this talk Monday, and someone came up after and was like, do you have something I could hand to my school district? I'm like, I actually don't, but I'll make it. But the premise of the document I made for her is an article written by Jonathan Haidt from New York University. It's just titled Get Phones Out of School Now. And he basically says, here's the research, phones in a learning environment are bad. They're a net loss. The city of Seattle has sued major companies that produce things like TikTok and Snapchat. It's not a huge jump for families going, okay, so we're suing that company because this is obviously bad for my child. And my child's using it in your classroom. Okay, so it's not a huge leap for me to go, so you're responsible for my child's use of class time doing something that's damaging them, right? We have the research to show that this is a net loss. We understand phones serve a purpose. They're a lot of fun. They can be really great. They can bring a lot of joy. And when compared to the amount of damage they do to developing brains in a learning environment, they are not a net gain. So we need to understand at least some of the information about that because that's coming from how they're being trained. To give us a pause real quick, we know the 2 types of tech. I'm going to ask you to turn to your elbow partner and say, what tool tech do you use most personally, you? And what drool tech is most common in your family? If you had to walk through your house, what are you going to see laying around the most? What gets used the most for minutes a day? However you want to answer that. Would you turn to your neighbor and in 2 minutes answer that? Go. I love it. So, a couple clarifications that I love. The question was Duolingo. What would that count as? Duolingo would be drool tech. It is designed for retention. It's trying to get you to stay a little bit longer. It's directed drool tech, though. You want to learn a language. It's helping you accomplish your task. Now, it has weird ads tied in if you don't want to pay the premium, and it's constantly trying to get you to give the microtransaction. But it is directed drool tech. It's trying to get you time on screen. How can you get more time practicing this language? Levels, points, little itty bitty snippy pieces, lots of noises and high fives that you get all the time to give you that next little boost, and the threat that if you're not in that top 75%, you get demoted. Oh, I know. But if you're in the top 15%, you get promoted to the emerald category, right? And there's that medal leveling motivational piece that is very drool tech. It does not make it bad. Just know on a young enough brain, they may not understand what's happening. And they may freak out when you're like, you can't learn Spanish anymore. And they're like, I have to. I need 400 more points or I'll get demoted. That feeling that happens inside them is by design. Just be aware. I would say the less sticky version, the less dangerous version, I guess, for a young brain would be something like Khan Academy. Still has medals, still has points, but it's entirely built around measuring and accelerating your math learning. If you've never done Khan Academy, please check it out. It's beautiful, KHANacademy.org. And they have a literature side that, I would do the math side. It's great because they break down every single skill, so you can click like third grade math, or in my case, today my son was using fourth grade math. And it will show you there's 16 units, and then you can roll over each lesson and be like, oh, this is double digit multiplication. And then there's an end unit quiz you can take, and it just gives you like 2 questions from each of those little micro lessons. And if you don't get it, they've got videos that you can go right into, and it's all contained in one spot. You're not leaving the website, and there's no like, this could go faster if you had our turbo boost upgrade. So those would be, I think, the idea behind the tool and drool tech. Doesn't make it bad, but it does bring in some complications with it as we think about it. Yeah, all right. Any other questions before we move on? Beautiful. And if you have some, jot them down, or if something comes to you, we'll get there. So then we want to know, all right, I know what my kid is using. I know tool and drool tech. I can picture that. I don't know if it's healthy, though. Like, just because my kid plays video games doesn't mean they have a problem. Just because my kid's on social media doesn't mean it's an issue. And I don't mean, oh, but your kid is a good or a bad kid. I mean, like, for me personally, I started playing video games when I was 8. My dad brought home a Nintendo Entertainment System. We played Duck Hunt and Mario on the same cartridge. It was epic. I have 4 sisters. By the way, if you want to mess a person up, give them 4 sisters, be the middle child, and then have them teach 8th grade for a decade. Like that's going to give you a very odd human. So we played Nintendo, and it was amazing. I just knew at that point in my life, like, this is right and good. I didn't have any other words. And the term gamer wasn't a thing yet. You didn't claim that moniker. That was the one that was given to you by other people on the playground to let them know that you were going to die alone. So that was like a social signal thing that you're like outside the bounds of the normal people. But like, I loved video games, and I played Nintendo, and then Super Nintendo, and then 64. And at the time it made sense, but in retrospect, I'm like, oh, like there was nothing wrong with the original Nintendo. Like, my kids don't play a lot of games. If they play original Nintendo, like, it blows their mind. Like, I got bored with it. So like, my people made a new system, and then we made another one, and then we made another one, to the point where now, if like I have to put something on my head and it has to project into my retinas, and like if my head's not smoking, it's not intense enough, because I have 30 years of entertainment scar tissue to go through, right? When we put that on a 10-year-old's head and then wonder why he's vibrating in bed at night, like, well, it's a little too intense for his little brain. What is the average age of a gamer right now in the United States?
32.
32.
Is it?
Just off the top of his head. Yeah, 32. Right? And actually, the stat that blows my mind the most is that there's more gamers over the age of 45 than there are under the age of 18. Which is an interesting fact. Yes, Mom's Candy Crush at soccer practice counts. It's $1 billion franchise. You are in with us. But the reason this matters, this section that I have about how do we know if our tech is healthy, comes from this idea of a reset. Does this tech impede my relationships and responsibilities, my emotions, sleep, enjoyment, time? This came from retrospect on my own experience. We don't have enough time in today's conversation. There's a second talk on the big 3, smartphones, video games, pornography. But the short version is, I realized I was playing for hope, not from hope. I was playing to be okay. Like, if I had a fight with my wife, I gamed. And when my friend passed away, I got home from the funeral and I gamed. And if I was anxious about work, I gamed. And if I was having a great week because it's Christmas break, I gamed. Like, that was the pinnacle of every experience, and everything else was just getting back. So May 11th, 2015 was the last time I played a video game, because my brain's broken. I don't have a dial. I couldn't just like tune it down. If I wasn't actively doing it, I was thinking about it. So that's my experience. The point isn't video games are bad. Video games are awesome. That's like a scientific fact. You have trillion-dollar companies spending billions of dollars on some of the smartest people on the planet to make good stories and engaging experiences. Games are awesome, but sometimes they get in the way. So how do you know with your kids' shows, music, video games, social media interactions, how do you know they're all right? Well, we're going to start by looking at the relationships and the responsibilities. Say, hey, does this tech get in the way of your relationships and responsibilities? Let's talk about it. Relationships, I want you to think about your family, so siblings, parents, their friends, and their classmates. First two are the people the first one is people they don't get to pick, but that are important relationships. So, meaning when they use this technology, are they more responsive to mom and dad? Like, does this make them better? Does it make them treat their siblings better? Or does it get in the way? Like, hey, I've noticed when you watch that show, when you listen to that music, this negative outcome in your relationships happens. You become more isolated. You become more withdrawn. You become more guarded. Let's talk about that. I'm not telling you that the tech is causing that. I'm telling you it's happening in tandem. Your opportunity is to now go talk about it. Reset is your talking point. You enter your child's life, say, hey, son or daughter of mine, I love you very much, and I've noticed. When you play that game, you're mean to your siblings, right? When you play that game, then we go to responsibilities. How are they doing with their family expectations? Like, you need to show up for dinner. You need to tell us about how your life is going. Like, that's an expectation as my child that you are going to be telling me about your life, good, bad, or otherwise. I want to be in the thick of it with you. I love you. They're going to be treating their friends a certain way. What's your relational connection with your friends? I guess it would be, what do you celebrate with these friends, right? Are they bringing out good things in you? Are you a bad influence on them? Let's talk about it. And when you use technology, how does it go? This will show up are we going there for hope or from hope? Your kid loves to play video games on Friday night with his or her friends. Cool. They come away more alive, high-fiving, better people, and they hang out in real life. But sometimes you get stuck in that hostage situation where, like, I have to be on this game because this is the only spot my friends are. And I found more often than not, that's a lie. More often than not, they're just filling a number in a squad. And when that bad day comes and your kid goes, hey, like, I'm sorry, I can't be on today because someone's sick or something went wrong or I'm dealing with this issue, those other kids go, that's fine, just tell us when you can come back on. That's not a friendship. Like, a friendship is involved, and a friendship has trust, and a friendship bears one another's burdens. And sometimes technology is more about just next man up. So relationally, we want to watch that. And then with our own children, are they wilting in their relationships? So relationships and responsibilities, relationship with the family, friends, classmates is because that's like a kid's microcosm of society. You don't get to pick those people. So, like, how are you doing dealing with just hard, broken people? And then responsibilities, your schoolwork, your family expectations, and then your commitments like sports or church involvement, or like the things you said yes to. You said you'd be in the school play. No, you can't quit now, so you can get more time on your favorite activity online. So that's what we're looking at first. If one of those goes, you know what, we are struggling with that, it just becomes a talking point. It doesn't become your ammunition to win this fight. Again, your kid is not a problem to fix. If there is a problem, it's not because you're a bad parent. It's because something is wrong, and you're going to find out what. Maybe it's the tech, maybe it's something else, but you will know at least because you're going to talk it out. The second is emotions. I don't just mean, does your kid like this thing? I mean, does your kid need this thing? Life isn't okay unless this thing is present. That's what we're looking for. A weird kind of digital codependence. And it could be, I have to be on this Discord chat with these friends in order to be emotionally stable. Sometimes that's true, right? We're going through a hard season. We just need this outlet, and we're just coping. And we know it, but we have an outlet. We're going to let it go a couple weeks. We're going to insert professional counseling or visits with friends or this other outdoor activity to help us level out. I get it. Like, we all have those seasons where we just need an hour of Netflix to chill. But if it's, I need that every single day to be all right, that becomes a conversational piece. Hey, what's going on? So when I talk about emotions, I'm not just talking about this is something I enjoy or it brings me happiness. I'm talking about your highest highs, your lowest lows are all tied to whether this thing is present or not. Like, oh, Friday's game night, but sister has a swim meet. So, like, you're not going to get it today. And, like, that's the end of the world and you hate me and nothing is ever going to be okay again. That becomes your talking point, right? Like, hey, just noticed a little that you weren't okay, right? When this game went away, what's happening? Right? What can you help me unwind that there? And we'll talk at the end a little more about why that matters to have that conversation. But third one is sleep. Does tech get in the way of your sleep? If you have drool tech in the bedroom, tech is getting in the way of sleep. No one needs a $1,000 alarm clock. You need this alarm clock. This is the one that I use. You can order it from Amazon right now. It'll probably be home before you are tonight. But really, like something like this, it doesn't connect to the internet. It runs off 2 AAA batteries. It lasts 6 months. So buy 4 so you have a spare. You flip it over to turn the alarm off. You flip it back over to turn it on. You tap it to snooze. The light goes off and you need to see it, you tap it again. So it's simple, it does its job, and it allows you to store your phone out. Yes, your kid's going to prom and you want to know if they're okay. Your sister's about to have another baby, and I have 4 sisters. So I've slept near my phone many a day in my life, but we're talking about what's the norm? What behaviors are we building? Because there's lots of research that shows having drool tech in the room is more trouble than it's worth. It's going to interrupt sleep. It's going to be a temptation that they are kind of have to constantly fight against. And I have no research that says that it's a net gain. I've yet to find that piece of research. So that's the general piece. If I were to share some of that research with you, it would be things like Matthew Walker. He runs the sleep department. That's not right. Neuroimaging and sleep at UC Berkeley. Sleep impacts intelligent quotient, emotional quotient, learning, memory, health, immune system. Effectively, every bodily function is impacted by sleep or a lack thereof. A lack of sleep, same guy, can cause fight and flight mode, basically panic attacks. So most people get the flight side. I found out doing this work, actually. So I started this job June 2019. If you do the math on that, that's a rough time to start professional speaking. And midway through 2020 is the first time I had a panic attack, but it was like weird, like Hulk rage. Where like, I'm not mad, but I feel mad. Like my body tells me I'm mad, but my brain tells me I'm not. What do you call that? And they're like, it's called a panic attack. You just got the fight side. Like, oh, that's not fun. I don't enjoy this feeling at all. It can be actually triggering for that when we have a lack of sleep. You sleep less, say because you're anxious about something, you get the added bonus of panic attacks and things like them. A lack of sleep is actually linked with depression and suicide. A pair of studies on that, but there's a lot more than just those two. We don't adapt to a lack of sleep, being like, I can train myself, I can like wean it off, like you can heat adapt your body to exercise in hot weather. That's not true with sleep. Your body will just go into sleep debt, which it'll start micro-sleeping. When it goes to sleep with your eyes open, like you might be driving or operating heavy machinery, it'll just go to sleep to survive because it'll die without it. And technology can artificially keep us longer than we want or up longer than we want. A loss of 1 hour of sleep is equivalent to losing 2 years of cognitive maturation and development. So this study was 77 kids wore sleep bracelets for a week. At the end of a week, they paired them out with an hour gap in between. The hour gap more performed two grade levels better than the group who lost 1 hour. And it's called the lost hour because kids on average right now sleep an hour less than they did, I want to say it was 20 years ago. You can check that. When I believe it's chapter 2 in that book. That's fascinating. Sleep matters. It matters for body composition. It matters for retention of memory. It matters for anxiety and depression. It matters for emotional and relational health. We want to make sure that sleep is not impeded by our technology. Fourth one is enjoyment. So we're talking reset. I know tool and drool tech, but is it a problem for my kid? Go, all right, is it a problem in their relationships and responsibilities, their emotions, their sleep, their enjoyment? Again, I don't mind if your child likes technology. I don't mind if their enjoyment even shifts like they used to be into A and now they're into B. We're talking about, does this technology become the only thing they enjoy? And everything else wilts. So an example on the positive side, my children love the show Wild Kratts. Anyone in the room enjoy Wild Kratts? Okay, so 10, 8, 4, they're all into it. And they do not watch a Wild Kratts and then like start, RKOing each other off the couch and like, screaming at their mom. They watch Wild Kratts and immediately go outside and building like bug hotels under the trampoline, which apparently is what you call stacks of sticks with some leaves. Like that's a bug hotel. But like they start flipping rocks and they start bringing in little critters for their mom to see, who by the way hates critters. That's not her love language, but like they are into it. And it brings out more joy in life. It brings out more enjoyment. So please let your child use all the technology that makes them more joyful and more engaged and more of who God's made them to be. But you're going to see some technology they use, and you're like, ooh, yeah, you're a different kid when you come away from that show. Or like you listen to that album, and my goodness, like, I don't know, the words aren't bad, but like something happens in your brain. I won't name the show, but on a different side, my children went and watched a show, highly suggested amongst friends. They came away as just little crazy people. They all turned into gremlins. And I'm like, no, like, I'm sure the show is fine, and I have no moral standard against it. But like, whatever's happening in your brains, we're not going to engage this right now. Like, that's not going to work for our family. Your enjoyment gets off kilter when this thing enters your life, and it's a one-to-one. Like, I start it, you go nuts, I stop it, you're fine. Okay, this just became expendable, right? That's the conversation we're having with our families, but with our children when those things go off the rails a little bit. And the last one is time. All I'm really pointing at here is, can you be content? Is it constantly a fight for more time and for the next opportunity and for, right, just constantly pushing the boundaries and the limits and the conversation? That needs to be a talking point with your child. You get to say, hey, I hear you. We agreed that X amount of time, 30 minutes was going to be our thing. My kids, they know they get to watch one show. And they better click that X in the top right corner. Oh, click the X. We don't have a TV right now in our home. A little personal experiment I'm running because my poor children are being raised by me. But we don't have one. We put a laptop in a drawer. I like the idea that it goes away, and it's winning momentum because a neighbor kid came over and like 15 minutes into being in our house, stopped in our kitchen and was like, you guys don't even have a TV. Like, notice there was nothing hanging on the wall. My wife keeps pitching the frame, by the way. She's like, but look, it could be pictures. So I'm like, I get it. I understand. This is like an experiment of just like, what if there's nothing on the wall and the furniture just faces furniture? Like, what would that look like? By the way, she definitely leveraged that to get me to shiplap the living room. So I get it. There's some trade-offs. But that idea being, can we be okay with the 30 minutes? Like, you get this one show. We, sometimes it's even Super Y or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be the same show, but like, we get this one thing, and are you okay with it? You can play this game, but it has to be within these boundaries and time limits. Can we be all right with that? That's all this is trying to get at. If it's not, that's, again, our conversational piece. Hey, why do you feel like you have to be on social media for 2 hours? I have to connect with my friends. I will tell you, if you can't do social media in 30 minutes or less, you're doing it wrong. Like, I do this for a living, and I can use social media for my job and personal needs in under 30 minutes, and not even every day. And whenever it goes over that, it's usually because something's wrong. Like, I was like, oh, I'll just check this one thing right before bed. And 20 minutes later, I'm standing in my kitchen in my socks. And I'm like, what am I doing again? Like, I was here for some reason. Who am I? And I'm just, super bummed usually at that point. So what we're trying to ask with a reset is, does this tech make my child more present? We'll talk about it later, but this idea of like, if we look at the fruit that's produced, and if we're told that the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control, if I were just to pick 3 of those, if I'd say if you get your child to use any tech that makes him or her more patient, more joyful, and more self-controlled, like, give them all of that tech, please. Like, that's what we want for people. But if it doesn't, that becomes our conversation piece, okay? The reason all that reset matters on the conversation is you don't actually know the problem. And I mentioned this early on that we would talk about the why. But you want to have that conversation because there's a really good chance that every time your child plays that game, something goes off relationally or emotionally or with their sleep. But you don't know why. It could be that this tech is just unhealthy. I had 2 young men, a junior and a 9th grader, the same year. Both of them failing 4 out of 6 classes. Both of them having concerned families bring them. One of them was brought, I was invited into a meeting when I was still teaching. I taught him the previous year, and he just decided I should be a part of this staff intervention. So his grandparents were there, all his teachers, all the counselors, and then me. And then this other young man and parents came to me. And in one case, it was simply that there was just too much YouTube. This kid was waking up early, putting in AirPods, watching and listening to YouTube from something like 5 or 6 a.m. until effectively midnight every single day. And just in mostly video game content, just watching video gameplay and walkthroughs and just soaking in it, to the point where he couldn't focus in class, and he was failing 4 out of 6 classes as a junior. Literally, the answer was take away the YouTube. Like, talk about his goals. Is this helping you become who you want to be? What do you want to do? He'd quit playing golf. That was his sport of choice. He's like, no, this isn't what I want. Like, I want to get my life back. So he chose to give up his smartphone. There's some amazing dumb phone options we'll talk about in the next section, by the way, that this young man didn't have. He went pretty cold turkey and picked up golf again and started seeing his friends again and went to college on a scholarship the next year and won a regional West Coast tournament. Like, it was great. But guess what? When he traveled with the team, he was the only kid without a smartphone because he's like, this doesn't help me with my goals. Like, I need to figure out how to handle it. That's awesome. Other young men, however, 4 out of 6 classes, very similar, a couple years younger. We know video games are an issue. At one point in the conversation, I was like, hey, your grandparents have told us that they got rid of your TV in your room and your PC and your PlayStation and your PSP. But what about your phone? He's like, no, I got my phone. I'm like, can you unlock that for me? He unlocked it. I swiped through. I was like, what are all these folders? He's like, those are all games. Interesting. How many games do you think are on this phone? 500. Interesting. Now, at that point, you're like, it's video games. Rip them away. Let's get this kid on the hard track. Few more questions, and it turns out that his dad had just moved home. This young man is 16, ninth grade. His dad moved out when he was 2. He moved back into his grandparents' garage, where he lived with his girlfriend and dog, and he's slinging dope to the neighborhood kids. Now, this young man is living on the other side of that wall from the garage and doesn't know how to process this information. This man demands he be called father when he's in the house. He's like, he's not my dad. Like, that's not going to happen. And he has no emotional ability to process this. He does not have the words. All he's doing is medicating with video games. If you rip video games away from this kid, he's not going to magically get better. Like, it doesn't make dad move out. It just means he no longer can cope with video games. He's going to find something else. When we talk to our kids, we do not know when a reset goes off. We don't know if they've seen something online they feel shame about, if they've done something online they feel shame about, they've been approached by a stranger that makes them feel unsafe, if they have witnessed, committed, participated in, or if they're just overwhelmed by the technology. We don't know what the cause is. We have to have a conversation. It's not always pretty, it's not super fun, but as loving parents, we want to step into those spaces with them to help them be safe and process those hard journeys. Because let's be serious, someone's kid has to be the problem, so it might be ours. Like someone out there is doing the bad stuff. We want to know if it's a pebble or blister. This picture comes from Hadley and Henry running around in the summer. Hadley came up and said, Dad, my foot hurts, pull off her shoe. She has a little piece of pea gravel jammed in her adorable little chubby foot. So I just pull the pea gravel out, slap the shoe back on, she runs off and it's fine. Henry does the same thing. Now Henry, this might surprise you, didn't have the foresight to put on socks. Didn't have the foresight to pull off his shoes after running through the sprinklers. So he's been running around for hours in soppy wet shoes with no socks on. Dad, my foot hurts. Pull off his shoe. He's got a silver dollar-sized blister on the bottom of his foot. I can't just peel that off and make the problem go away. It's going to take some gauze. It's going to take some education. It's going to take a dryer. It's going to take some time to get him to be healthy again. And that's what we're trying to figure out here. Is this tech the cause, or is it symptomatic of the problem my child's experiencing? I can see the problem. The reset shows up. But is it just, hey, listen, we got to remove this. I know I bought this for your Christmas. I see that. And I'm sorry. We're going to take that. We're going to replace it with something amazing. And like, it just can't be here because you asked me for an egg and I'm a loving parent and I gave you an egg. I love giving my kid good gifts, right? But I just realized it wasn't an egg, it was a scorpion. And I just can't leave you with the scorpion because I gave it to you once. So like, well, what good can you do? You're just going to get stung a lot. Like, I'm going to remove this because I love you and I want you to be healthy. So that's the idea there. When we reflect then, I want you to reflect on your personal reset. I know you were running that inventory for your children. You're like, oh man, they're a 5 out of 5. But for yourself, where are you? And then how can you know if it's a pebble or blister? How can you know if the reset is off because of the tech in your life or the tech is actually caused by something else? You're turning to tech because something else is off and that actually needs to get fixed. I'm going to give you a full 2 minutes, plenty of time to get to the bottom of that. But to start the conversation, 2 minutes, go. Any questions that you want to address from this?
What was that?
Hold on. We got some motivated conversations. I love it. All right, bring it in. One time I forgot I was in middle school teaching and I shouted eyes up. I'm sorry if I do that to a group of adults. That's not my intention. Any questions that we need to address prior to moving on? We know the 2 kinds of tech. We know how to assess if it's healthful or healthy. Okay. All right. Then what's your reset is the question we're asking for ourselves. We want to make sure that we know how our technology is impacting us. I shared my own video game experience. I was a 5 out of 5 on video games. All 5 of those were impeded by my technology use. And while there were pebble and blister aspects, the pebble piece was the biggest. Like video games were the thing that had to go. It was the causal link to all the other stuff. It was actually a cascading effect of emotional lack of health and a lack of sleep and those things, but starting back at video games. Some people, that's not the case, like the young man I shared about. So that's what we're looking for. It certainly starts with us when we talk about modeling healthful tech. But yeah, that's it. So safe tech at home then. How do we make our technology safe at home? And we're going to break it into 3 parts. We're going to talk about our network, then our devices, then our family. And like any good 8th grade teacher, I've snuck 3 subpoints under point 3. So just really getting your money's worth tonight. But to begin the conversation, I had alluded to this earlier, but we do need to understand that the internet is the new cul-de-sac. It's where children go to play. 90% of kids have regular access to the internet and use that access. So 1 in 10 that don't have any access. They don't use their parents' phone. They don't use a home laptop or tablet. They don't have any personal devices, but a vast majority of them do. It's where they're playing games and hanging out and learning new information and making jokes and sharing stuff they care about. And we need to be very clear about where that cul-de-sac is. That cul-de-sac of the internet is next to a federal penitentiary and a freeway in the red light district at midnight. Like, that's the cul-de-sac of the internet that you're sending your children out to hang out with each other. And it is good to hang out and have friends, and I want your children to belong, but don't think that, like, it's the cul-de-sac you may have grown up with. Like, that's not it. There's a lot of other things going on there, and we'll talk later about how do you send a digital dog with your child into those spaces to help you be aware of what's safe and what's not. But that's what we're dealing with when we talk about our digital spaces that we want our children to be part of. So I suggest building a hedge. I liked this picture because I'm not going to tell you how big your hedge needs to be. Maybe it's that monstrosity. I dig it. But what I like about a hedge is we don't believe hedges to be impermeable. You're not trying to build a castle wall. If you try to rely on just good enough safety measures to keep your child perfect digitally, all you're going to end up doing is making them sneaky. A kid who wants to make a mistake digitally will make that mistake. Our job then is to build that relationship, get the rapport and trust, and assess lovingly, is this tech a good idea, and are you ready for it? Hedges help keep that buffer. The idea behind building a hedge is that we're going to keep the bad stuff at arm's length. We're going to have a childhood. We're going to have experiences that are positive, that set a baseline for love and hope and kindness and who you are in Christ. And then we're going to introduce some things, but slowly. And if it goes awry and messes with our reset, we're going to talk about it so that our child is both, yes, being kept safe, but more importantly, they're being trained. So you don't have to have a crash course at 17 and a half that's like the new version of the digital sex talk of like, well, son, when a man loves a woman, he swipes left. Like, that's not what's happening here. Like, you're going to let your child figure out technology within reasons for their age, responsibility, and trust level. And you're going to keep some of that harm at bay. And if they can't handle it, you're going to give them space away from it. So let's dive into what it looks like on a network level. You're going to provide safe internet at home. I assume most of you have internet at home. You have wireless, meaning you're not only connected to the internet through your phone. If you are, different conversation, but let's presume most of us have wireless internet. That means you're going to need to work with this little gem. He's a router. You might love your router, and that's great. You have whatever Xfinity or Comcast or CenturyLink gave you. But if you don't like it, you want something that's blazing fast in a new device, Griffin makes a great router. If you love your router, you can use something like the Bark Home. The goal here is we are building a hedge around our network. Things like smart TVs, notoriously difficult to block. They have apps, they have web browsing, and they have almost no parental controls. They're very tricky. But if you block it off at your network level, everything on your Wi-Fi now is beholden to your family rules. So Griffin allows you to set 4 categories. That's why this is the one I use, that specific one. It's the AX. I want to say it's like $250. I was moved from a Google router because I was told it was end of life. And I bought this and my internet speeds tripled. And I was like, oh, turns out my router was super old. So you have a super old router, something like that might let you maximize your investment that you're already paying. But what I really like about it for security side is that it lets you break tech into 4 categories. So you have your like just general smart home stuff like your Nest, your Roomba, and then you have your smart TVs, and then you have your family devices like, oh, this is the tablet that your kids can watch shows on or play games on. And then you can have your parental, like this is mom or dad's work laptop. Like it can have a separate category that you can set it in for what's being filtered or what time it shuts off. Like these devices shut off at 8. But I didn't have to shut off all of the Wi-Fi, like I can still be on that Zoom call tonight. So that is nice. It certainly takes some investment of time. You have to individually drag and drop each device, but If you're going to have smart devices in your home, that's the only way to protect them. There's no other way other than protecting it, building a hedge around the network level. So you really love your router or you don't like all the rigmarole of the Griffin, get something like a Bark Home. It's just an extra box that plugs in to your router, and it gives you an app that allows you to set basic supervisory pieces. So if someone logs on to your Wi-Fi, they still have to follow like a "we don't go to these kinds of websites" thing. You get to see where people visit, so the babysitter joins your Wi-Fi and now has to follow your rules. Or someone brings an Xbox or a burner phone. The big thing here is like someone brings a device that's internet capable but doesn't have cell service. An old defunct smartphone, an e-reader, a laptop, Xbox, whatever that thing is, these will make sure that they follow your Wi-Fi rules. So that's why this is our first layer. You have to have something. And I know all these cost money. And people say, why would I have to spend more money? Like that device already costs so much. And the answer is, because you already bought them the car, don't skimp on the seatbelt. Like give them the thing that can help mitigate some of the damage that can be done out there. Something will go wrong at some point. Our job in lovingly providing these resources is to make sure we can be some of the first to respond. So Griffin helps, or the Bark Home at the network level. Then we go to our devices. So this is the things that have their own smart signals. They get cell service, smartphones being the most common. I do need to say this. If you have Wi-Fi at home, that's because you're under the same assumption everyone else is, that smartphones are about being connected when you're not at home. Right? When I leave, I brought my smartphone with me. But when I go home, I actually don't need that device anymore. It's no longer serving its purpose of keeping me connected with my family because I'm around my family. So that thing needs to go away. This is our number one rule. When you build a hedge around your network, it does no good when a smartphone walks in, because that hedge does not apply to that device at all. Like your friends show up and they all have internet connected smart devices. There's no way to hold accountability. Like you can shucks kids these days, but I'll tell you, I was raised in a Christian school with 28.8 internet, and I still found porn on purpose. And that was me in the 90s and early 2000s. I'm pretty sure a curious kid with the superpowers of a smartphone in their pocket can get in a lot more trouble a lot faster. So we want to make sure that we're being deliberate with that. Practicing putting our smartphones away when we get home. You can get a device to support that. There's a cool gamified thing called a Go Aro, A-R-O, out of Tennessee, I want to say. But basically, it's a box you put your phones in. It doesn't lock. It's not like a time capsule, but it just tracks on an app who's had their device in there the longest. And you can do a sticker board for it or whatever you want to do with your family. But it's a cool idea. The idea that there's a tangible way to say I kept my phone in there for X amount of time and it's trying to retrain. Use the gamification for positive. I want to leave my phone down more, but I find myself picking it up. You guys notice this? My kids run upstairs, they're brushing their teeth, and I have 3 minutes. It's not long enough to start a new task, but it's way too long to just stand by myself. What do we inevitably do? With increments of time in 3 minutes, we get on our phones. I'll do dumb things I'll check Strava with 3 minutes. I don't need to know who went on a run today. That doesn't matter. I'll check I have a cycling training app and I'm looking at my next workout. Nobody needs that. I have found myself checking the weather with those 3 minutes. That's horrible. As a Christian, that is a beautiful time to pray for my children, to lift up my wife in prayer, to repent about something, make some space, but I'm not, that's not supposed to happen. Sorry, guys. That's not what we're supposed to do. Sorry, guys. Let me fix this. I got excited. And play. Ha! All right. So we do need to build a hedge around our devices by providing accountability. When we do this, we are putting our devices away when we're home. So this is assuming this is out of our building. When we're home, use your computer, use your iPad, use whatever number of other smart devices you have that connect through Wi-Fi. But it also sets you up for when they see mom or dad put their phones away. By the way, I'm not saying you can't check it. I'm saying just, I leave mine in a drawer and I'll go check it. And sure enough, there's a work thing or coming out here tonight. There are logistics that have to be planned. I get that. ER nurses, I understand you have special situations. But by and large, most of us can put those devices away. This accountability then is for when this thing leaves our house. Bark and the Bark phone. So two different things. This is the digital dog. Bark is a software. It goes on your device and it provides the trust your child has earned. I'm assuming if your child has a smartphone, they have earned the opportunity to have that smartphone. They've shown themselves trustworthy in little things, and you say, great, I love you. This will be an egg for you. Go and use it well and be well nourished. Bark is then the way to go, and I want to verify it stays an egg. So when something goes wrong, it doesn't read your digital diary. It doesn't tell me how fast you were going on the freeway. Again, if I can't trust you with that stuff, I shouldn't give it to you in the first place. But it will tell me when someone texts something mean or you search something that's unsafe. And it will give me gradients. If you're like, what is depression? That's one level. Someone else says, I hate you, no one likes you. That's another level. And if Steve from social media says, I can't believe you're only 12, you're so cute, that's a different level. That provides you with a notification, that provides you the chance to go to your child and go, hey, how'd you meet Steve? All right, through Roblox. Fascinating. Let's talk about that. How old is he? How do you know? Don't ever meet him in public. So those are the conversations Bark allows you to have. The Bark phone is one of those really cool things that's happened in the last year. Last January it came out. It's awesome. It's a dumb phone. It defaults to just you can text and you can take pictures, but you can't send or receive them. Like this phone is locked down. And then as your child earns more trust, you can be like, oh, I'll release this one app. Yeah, you can be on the WhatsApp with your team. But while that's happening, I receive notifications because Bark is hard baked in. And there's none of the confusion. Like iPhones, it's tricky with the licensing rights. For inside an app, like you can't see with Bark what's happening in DM. Because you don't have the rights to do that. You would on an Android device, you would on a computer, but you can't on an iPhone. Bark doesn't have that, and there's no way to like start it in safe mode and then click these different links and get to the internet. It's just the operating system is Bark. So I'm a huge fan of this. I get rave reviews from parents when they use it. If you have a young person who's earned your trust and is asking for a smartphone and is at least 15, you can give it to them. Dumb phones are for kids under 15. The functionality does not behoove a developing mind or relationships or childhood. So if you want your child to be safe in case of emergency and at sports, get them a Gab phone or a Gab watch, something that's just meant for communication, can't send or receive images. These are for the, hey, I want to use this runway from 15 to 18 to raise them up in the way they should go digitally. Bark phones are great for that. Bark phones can filter websites, manage screen time, monitor content, give you location alerts like, oh, Johnny got home. It'll just notify you when he arrives at home. Basic functional stuff for the digital age without being creepy police state stuff. Covenant Eyes is what I personally use. So for image-based specifically, this is just for pornography. They're not doing any of the social media stuff, search history stuff. This is just if it comes up image-based. Again, works better on Android devices. So Google Pixel better than an iPhone, but it's functional on an iPhone. They just switched it so it's an extension for like a Google Chrome browser, which is great. That works fine. But again, you will run into some stuff within apps. Like I'm using Instagram. It doesn't do a great job within Instagram. It'll notify you if someone leaves Instagram. But if you want high accountability, you're going to need a device that isn't an iPhone for the best. But Covenant Eyes is great because it uses AI to check images in real time. So that's the movies they watch and the pictures that are sent to them and the searches they make are all scanned, and then it'll take screenshots and send you like a blurred version, again, allowing the conversation. The point isn't, aha, I caught you. The point is, no one should be the only person that sees what happens on their phone. Like, that's a biblical truth. Like, we're never actually the only person seeing it, and we should bring that to reality. As adults, we can model this. This is something I've been using since college, and it's great because 99.9% of the time I want to make good decisions. I love my wife. I love having a healthy mind and heart. I love being able to do ministry with a clear conscience. And 0.01% of the time, 7th grade Nathan with the 28.8 internet wakes up and goes, you know what? We could be super dumb right now. Huh? Anybody? Come on. And this goes, yeah, you could. It's free. You have a will. Go for it. Just know that two people who love you will also see it. And that's sobering. There's a lot of decisions we wouldn't make in life if we knew two people who love us would be in the room at that time, right? Like, it's good. So think about this as an option if that's a conversation you're having with us specifically. So Sam Black is the VP of recovery at Covenant Eyes, and he said teenage and up is the age they suggest. Anything other than that, so this is the activity feed where it takes a snapshot. It's blurred, so you're not going to read, bank account info or whatever. It might be private, but it gives you enough, and it will tell you whether it's concerning or not. Whether their AI is like green light, it's great. Yellow is like, we're not exactly sure. And red is like, nope, there's definitely things that need to be talked about. And the conversation there isn't just, why'd you look at this? The question is, hey, I saw this. What's going on? Like, I keep noticing it's at 2 a.m. I noticed that they'll be like, oh, it was an accident. Like, that's interesting because it tells me you were there for 15 minutes. Right? Like, that's a long accident. Because there are pop-ups and things that happen in life. And it will show you, like, this was, 2 seconds. Okay, I get it. But also, let's have the conversation about what were we doing on a site that shows that kind of ad, and are there ways that we can be more deliberate with the content we're ingesting online. Then we're going to build a hedge. So we have it around our network and around our devices. Devices are accountable. We already had the relational piece with a reset. And the network of our home, our smart TVs and our laptops and our personal computers and our tablets, e-readers, are all connected to the same network with the same rules. Then we're going to build a hedge around our family. This is the relational piece. In this, we want to settle 3 things. We want to make sure that our tech is safe, that it's helpful, and that it's good. This is our standard. When parents go, oh, should I get my child whatever the new Tickle Me Elmo is of the world, right? Like, sometimes they want to know, is it the Yoto, basically the hard disk Audible program that's not internet connected, or I want to get my child an Echo Dot. I don't know. Like, is it these 3 things? That's what we need to talk about. So first, is it safe? Our standard for this that I've been alluding to all night is Luke 11. Which one of you, if his son asks him for an egg, will give him a scorpion? A good father loves to give good gifts. In this case, fathers and mothers love to give good gifts. My child asked for this thing, and I want to make sure I give you something that's good. How do I know? Best tech is going to be tool tech. Doesn't mean don't give your children drool tech. It simply means if you do, know that that's going to be something to talk about. Then we want to make sure that there's no browser. We're talking if it's going to be the safest of the safe. No apps. And then it can be held accountable. Doesn't mean never give your child drool tech that has apps and a browser. It just means know that that's not safe tech. I do lots of things that aren't safe. I mentioned my cycling app. I love cycling on the roads of the South Sound. It's amazing. I found this in adulthood. It's one of those things like it's faster than running, but like it still is hard. So it's like I'm a little bit like a wrestler still, but I'm not going to break my hip. But it's dangerous. I don't know about up here. Maybe people love cyclists in Seattle, but I found the bigger the truck and the larger the flag they're flying in the back, the more mad they are that I'm wearing tights in public. So I have a bunch of things to help me with that, right? I go in safe spots at certain times of day. I have a Garmin Varia, the tail light that tells you if cars are coming and how many they are and how fast. It's amazing. Please get your loved ones one if they ride bikes on roads. It literally shows up on my head unit, right? Like, that's a calculated risk. Could I get clipped and sent into a ditch, breaking both femurs in my face? Yes, right? That is a problem. If you've ever watched professional cycling, you will watch those guys. They look like jockeys, but they're made of titanium. You ever watch professional cycling? 40 kilometers an hour into a corner, and they just wreck, and they just like throw their broken bike to the side and get a new one, and they're like, only 60 miles left, here we go. I'm like, who are these people, and what are they made of? So, calculated risks, but if you want the safest, this is safe. You go, should I bring this tech into my home? That's our standard, and then go, oh, you know what? This does get online. This is why the Echo Dot struggles. Be like, oh, you know what? It's super hard to make one of these accountable, and it has just the internet. And my child will ask for a song that was appropriate, but turns out there's a song of the same name, or they're my kids and they just think booties are funny. And so they'll ask for that and they'll get it. I'm like, oh my, like that was, all right, we gotta work on the safety settings. So that's our safe tech. You're welcome to diverge from that, but just make sure you do so deliberately. You're doing it intentionally and your head's up about it. Something like the Gab phone would be the perfect example. I mentioned this one before. This is the ultimate dumb phone. It doesn't do anything other than the apps that are locked in. No app store, no browser. You can take pictures, but you can't send or receive them. If Gospel Tech, by the way, I partnered with them. I don't make any money off this. Anything you spend that they give goes right back to the nonprofit so we can do more of this stuff. So just know we did partner with them. We like them a lot, and that is Gospel Tech if you're interested in those. The Bark phone, it'll be Gospel Tech 10 for the Bark phone. I don't know why they added the 10. There's definitely not another Gospel Tech out there, but they got excited and put 10 in it. So they run specials like every 3 months. So you can either follow us on social media at Love God Use Tech, or you can just check Bark out and use it when they do it. But they do a lot of like either 2 for 1, or they'll do just like, we'll give you a free phone when you sign up, which is great. But if you just want to buy it tonight. I want to say the phone's $200, something like that. So it's reasonable compared to, what else you're buying. And that's all the stuff it can do. My favorite is setting app time limits, remotely locking the phone, and the ability to receive alerts. That is Bark's like specialty. They just have gotten into the hardware side, but someone needs to buy out Bark and just put this in every single device. Like this needs to be everywhere because it's a no-duh. There's no losers. Districts are starting to roll it out on all of their devices because, again, the point isn't build these giant walls and kids will never make a mistake. The point is when they make a mistake, like let's have those conversations about like what's happening and why would you do that? And like let's just have that high-level accountability because when it comes to repeat offenses, there may come a time like, hey, listen, like this isn't safe for you. You keep running your car into buildings. Like we're gonna go ahead and not give you a car. Like we're not just gonna give you a car that only goes 20. Like we're gonna give you a bicycle because that does a lot less damage when you run into something. So that idea I really do enjoy about Bark, and I love the way they've run their program so far. Yeah, Gospel Tech 10. So that's safe. How do we keep something safe? But then is it helpful? Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. When my children say, Dad, can I watch the show, play this game, listen to this music, engage this app my friends are all doing at school, I just start with the first four, true, honorable, just, pure. That also applies to what I enjoy though, right? Now, is there a time to engage a hard story? Sure. Is there a time to engage something that's gritty? Probably. Is there certain levels of things that are acceptable from me that wouldn't be acceptable for my 8 and 10-year-old? Yes. Like they don't watch the first 45 minutes of Star Wars Episode 6. They ask why, and I just say because Jabba the Hutt gets strangled to death. I fail to mention the gold bikini because just mentioning it, they're going to be like, I'm going to Google that now. Like I must know. But this is the idea of like, man, that's not going to help your brain. It's not going to help your heart. How can I love you well in this? We have a standard biblically for what we should be celebrating with our time and our focus and our money. So that's something we want to talk about in that space. So we're talking about, is it helpful? Philippians 4:8. It goes beyond just the content though. We want to make sure that we have a framework built around the time, place, content priorities, and safety of this technology. So to run through that quick, time is how often can I use it? When can I use it? And how long? So what time of day can I engage it? How many times a day? And how long in a given stint? So like with social media in 30 minutes, I don't want you checking it for just 3 minutes at a time every 15 minutes, right? Like I want you to use it, enjoy it, get the most out of it, and now come back to me, right? And so setting times for technology, I want this for myself. I don't want to be running to my weather app when I get stressed out writing. I want to get up and do some jumping jacks and say a prayer and like train myself to, as Cal Newport would say, do deep work. That's the timepiece. The place is mainly, where's our drool tech? Content, what are we celebrating in the shows, in the games, in the music? Priorities being, if I had a 25th hour in the day, I still wouldn't play video games. Maybe if I had like a 35th hour, right? Or a clone, he could just play video games all the time with his extra day. But like, I have priorities and video games don't help me accomplish any of them. They don't help me love my wife or serve my kids or glorify the Lord or do the work he's set before me or be fit or not be anxious. Like they don't accomplish any of that. I just like them. And that's not a biblical standard for doing something. So priorities matter and we have to talk out like, hey, what matters to our family? What are we gonna do first? Are family meals important? Is our sleep important? Is exercise important? Is our schoolwork important? Like whatever it is for you guys, like just make sure your family knows it. Safety is things like make sure every picture you take has your face in it. Just stuff like that. Like talking big, because sometimes pictures kids send don't include faces.
Not nature.
Yeah. Don't say where you are when you take it. Enjoying a Friday night at Sally's. Like don't do that stuff. If you don't know any of that, there's great resources online. I actually made a family tech framework like tutorial online if you want some of that. That's it. So you can go gospeltechworkshop.com and Digital Nathan walks you through that. GT Workshop would be your checkout code and you just get 30% off. So it'd be $35 instead of $50. Is it good is our last one. When we talk about the family hedge, we want to look at the fruit. I had mentioned this before, but I want to tackle it with the bad fruit. We always talk about fruit of the Spirit, but did you know there's another set of fruit that's an option? Like it's not just, and it will produce certain amounts of fruit of the Spirit. Like it can produce this stuff. Some of my favorites are highlighted: sensuality, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, division, and envy. I mean, there's entire platforms built around those things. Whole companies where their only job is to generate sensuality or envy. Instagram lives in envy. If you're not feeling bad about yourself, they're not doing their job. It's what's driving you to doom scroll, is the fact that their lives are awesome and yours must stink. If you felt good about yourself, you'd go live your awesome life. That's not good for revenue. Keep this in mind. If it's producing bad fruit in us, if we watch our children go, man, yeah, your reset's off and I can spot it. Like this thing is feeding this part of your heart that does not glorify the Lord. I want to call that out. Not to blame my child, but to put a really fine point on this is what's going wrong here. There is good fruit though, and I mentioned already, if you can get patience, joy, and self-control, anything that just builds those three, use it. I mentioned Wildcrafts. My kids love it, and I watch it. They also enjoy Dude Perfect a lot. Maybe not your cup of tea, but they made me watch the pet stereotypes today, and they like everything becomes a trick shot. Like they just, everything is a bottle flip. Everything is like, can I bounce it off this and then my brother's head into the bowl? Like, and it isn't like all I want to do is sit here and engage more of it. It actually brings flourishing in life. So right now, the Dude Perfect app is a big deal in our family. So not sponsored, just a fan. But good fruit, we want to use tech that improves our child's reset, that makes their relationships and responsibilities, their emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time better. Because at the end of the day, the best tech is going to help our children look more like Jesus. And I firmly believe there's tech that can do that. There's tech that brings glory to God and can do that. It doesn't have to be a negative experience. Some of it is by design, especially with drool tech, but we can actually impact that. So my questions for you. Whoa, come back. Okay, there you go. What tech in your home produces the best fruit? When you turn to your elbow partner and you think, man, this tech is amazing and I love it. I'm glad my family has it. And is there tech in your home that may not fit that Philippians 4:8 standard? I'm going to give you 2 more minutes with your neighbor. Go. That was like 2 minutes. A couple more, sorry, got excited. Bonus, based because this was like the biggest part of the Q&A that I always got, so I just added slides. So here you go. You don't even have to ask if this is something you're wondering about. The question is my child ready though? Like, okay, so I know what the tech is and I know if it's safe and I know how to build my hedges, but like, is my 10-year-old ready or my 15-year-old ready? Or like, I was talking in West Virginia and a kid's like, my parents hate me. They never give me anything. And mom stepped up and was like, actually, he committed a felony on his smartphone. And I was like, oh, interesting, right? Like, fascinating. How do I know if that child is ready? By the way, I love the like my parents hate me arguments. Like I just listened to it and let it roll. I had another young lady come up to me, totally different talk. This is in Puyallup. She's like, yeah, my parents, like they're so mean. Like figuring out she's 8th grader, like doesn't let me have my phone. Why do you want a phone? Well, I'm talking to this boy. And like, it's kind of escalating until the point like, oh, the boy's a junior. And the boy keeps telling me I need my own phone. Like it'd be so cool if we could just like hang out without your parents being on the phone. I'm like, so what I'm hearing you say is a junior is telling you he wish he had less parental supervision when he's around you. It's like, well, when you say that, it sounds creepy. I'm like, that's because it's creepy. Like I'm just repeating what he's telling you. Let's just hear it. How do I know if that 8th grader is ready for the independence that she shows? She's a good kid, gets good grades, right? Like lovely, has a good heart, but like the internet doesn't. So like, how can I make sure this kid's ready? Here's how we do it. First, we check the little things. So we're using Luke 16:10 for this. If they're faithful in little, they're going to be faithful in much. So that's where that reset piece comes in of like, you know what? You treat your siblings awesome, so I can trust you to treat these other people awesome. You treat your classmates well. You handle conflict well. When you're corrected, you listen to instruction. That's great, because the internet is going to do nothing but expose you to areas I have to instruct you in. And if you don't listen, if you refuse to take instruction and love making mistakes, I'm going to make you make those at the pace of real life. Like, I'm not just going to accelerate your mistake making. That's not a thing where you make enough mistakes online and you learn. You just practice bad habits. that then become perpetual and supported by whatever the algorithm is like, this person loves these decisions. I'm going to support that, right? Especially in something like TikTok, where the algorithm is very powerful. Faithful in little, faithful in much doesn't mean just throw the whole kit and caboodle. But all right, we're going to start releasing some line here and letting you experience more of the internet. Little things like, I like this list to start. I mentioned these. Are you faithful in these things? But if you really want to go into it, these all matter too and have biblical basis for like, well, where your treasure is. Like, what do you spend your money on in real life? Because you're just going to do that more in digital spaces. It may not cost you anything, but like that's what you're going to be pursuing. That's what we want to know for our kids. I say pick 3. An example would be, all right, so my child has asked me for a smartphone. Are you ready? Or you lost your smartphone due to your own choices, and I lovingly removed it because you're harming yourself and others, and now you're going back. You're going to use a public device, like the family laptop. It's locked down, it follows our rules, but you're welcome to use it within these parameters. Then they could get maybe just a dumb phone. Can you handle the responsibility of keeping this thing on your person and practicing leaving it alone? Or do you just need it all the time to be okay? Then a shared device. You can use my phone. I'll download that app. You can talk to your friends on it during times we've agreed on, and then you can give it back to me, and we'll make sure this is working well for you. And finally, certainly, you can have your own personal device. You've asked for it, you've earned it, and you're old enough, and it's going to come with some kind of accountability. You don't just get complete lawlessness on the internet. And if they say, I would rather not have a device than have a device with accountability, the question is definitely why. Like, as an adult, it's not a good decision for me. Why are you so bent on getting this complete lack of accountability on the internet? What is it that you want to accomplish? Because as loving parents, we simply can't allow that. Like, but I have to drive to school blindfolded. Yeah, no. Like, I get it. You're not going to do that. I might let you walk. Like, go with your sibling. You can walk blindfolded. But I'm not going to let you just enter the internet on this high-powered device with no accountability because the internet is not designed currently to keep you safe. There are no guardrails. This is not the kiddie pool. Like, this is the digital cul-de-sac, and we have to be deliberate in how we handle that. So the time is right when your kid is faithful in little things. But what if they've made that mistake? Then we take a step back. It is perfectly loving to remove what is causing harm and replace it with something that is better for them and lines up with their passions and interests. I'm not saying make them watch the paint dry or teach them character by making them do hard stuff. I'm simply saying if your right eye causes you to sin, cut it out. Everything is on the table here. If there's something that is causing that fruit of the flesh, if this is bringing a cycle of harm to your child, to your family, to someone you love, removing that thing is the only loving option. Right? Certainly you can temper it. Start there. Say, hey, we're going to draw this down from 10 hours a week to 2. Okay. But at some point, it's too much. And that for me was video games. I had to cut that off. That became expendable because it was getting in the way of who God was calling me to be. And that is true for all of us in our digital spaces. So last reflection. Where is your child showing faithfulness? Where are they crushing it? Maybe it's not in a digital space. It's just normal life. Where are they doing well? And you could think of something to praise them for when you see them, maybe not tonight, maybe tomorrow. But you can say something positive about what they're doing. And what next steps can you use to build trust in digital spaces? That slow rollout for my kids right now, it's can you handle Khan Academy? Can you handle Wildcrats and be okay? Great. If so, then we'll continue this. And if not, all right, maybe we need to get more into board games. Like, by the way, board games are amazing. I don't know if you've played board games since Monopoly, but they've come a really long way. Like, games are incredible now. So if you want to nerd out for a while on board games, come talk to me. But what next steps can we do to build trust in those spaces? That could include building hedges. Would you turn to your neighbor for the final 2 minutes of conversation? Go. All right, so in closing, we now know the 2 kinds of tech, tool and drool, designed differently, not good and bad, but if you're going to have a fight, it's going to be drool tech. We know a reset to assess any kind of tech we're using. Can you misuse tool tech? Yeah. Many of us, if we're the hard driving type, might struggle with email because it makes us feel important. I'm personally guilty of sneaking email on family trips. It's a weird feeling to be like, getting back to work stuff at 11 p.m. in the living room, right? Like I snuck my laptop out on vacation with my family to like get back because it feels awesome to like plan talks and know stuff is coming up and like do research and stuff. But that's probably a problem and not one that I want to model for my kids. So it can be done, but drool tech is the one that generally causes its own issues. That was a hard issue. It's not an email issue. Build hedges, network devices, and our family, and we know how to make sure that it's safe, helpful, and good. Then your next steps. Please read these notes tomorrow. Either the finished versions that are in the back, if you want, with all the blanks filled in, but read it. It will help you remember it a lot longer and have those words come up faster when these situations arise in your own life. There's a podcast if you want more ongoing conversation. It's still a work in progress, even though we're 200 episodes in. It is still, I'm learning and growing in the process. Right now we're going through the Start Here series. It's a great time to jump in. But basically, the nuts and bolts of everything I just shared with you tonight in podcast form. And then build a hedge around your family. Start with that one. Yes, do the network. Yes, do the devices, but start with the relational piece because the best hedges around your network and devices won't stop someone from making a mistake on purpose. That's going to be, all right, a mistake has already been made. What do I do now? When I talk to kids, I have two talks. One's use tech on purpose, not for purpose. The other one is hope. Making a mistake doesn't make you a mistake. And that talk, I go, I'm going to assume some of you have made mistakes. Is that fair? And I do this with sixth graders up to seniors. No, right, you get heads nodding. I'm going to assume some of you made mistakes and you did it on purpose. Like, is that fair? Like, great. Let's start there. Like, rather than having a whole talk and like, just don't do it wrong, right? Like, assume your child has already done something dumb before you came to this. And now the job is like, what's happening? What's going on in your heart? How can I love you where you're at? And not excuse it. I'm not going to, well, God's grace. Like, no, like this is causing death. God hates this and so do I. But we both love you. So in light of that, how can I love and support you well and build a hedge? The final thing I would say is that little box down at the bottom right is a QR that gives you a survey link if you're interested. That helps me make sure that I'm producing resources that are actually helpful. It's how this talk became 90 minutes. This used to be, this and the other talk were 1 2-hour talk. And then this was literally public demand. They're like, we wish there were 2. I'm like, you mean you want me to talk more? Excellent. So that's how this happened, that there are now 2 different talks. One on safe at home, one on the big 3 of technology, smartphones, video games, pornography, is all parent feedback. And if at some point parents are like, we don't care, make it all one, I guess I would talk twice as fast or cover half as much. I don't know what. But we would do something. And then if you want to reach out to me, Nathan@gospeltech.net is my email. So any questions at this point? This is your time. We have all 11 minutes or whatever. Yeah, 12. Yes?
Yes, I feel like you addressed it implicitly several times.
Okay.
But one thing that I think of when I think of these times is the importance of kind of being with your child or with your family in an activity, whether it's a video game or watching something online or whatever. My kid is 2 years old, so I'm not here yet. This is entirely forward-looking. I'm seeing much more of myself, rather, when you talk about the children's problems than anything else. But would you speak a little bit to that about like how to do things with your children to kind of build up these habits?
Yes. So question was, how do we do this with our kids to help kind of raise them up in the way they should go, modeling healthy behavior? This is actually a core part of the big 3 when we talk about video games. We assess them. Certainly, there's 6 questions we run through. The first would be like, all right, should my child play this video game? Well, what is the character like? Would I have this character over for dinner? Right, that's part of the modeling. I need to have that conversation with my kid. Maybe I would or would not have Mario or Master Chief over, but I need to tell my child, like, that parasocial relationship is real, and the nostalgia will be real, and I want to make sure I'm supporting that. But once I let my child into that space, I go to that space with them. And that might be the music they listen to or the platform they use. Like, you might end up doing a really cringe TikTok dance because you let your child be on there and that now matters to them. Your child matters, that makes the tech matter. Once it's appropriate, once it's approved, once your child's in that space now matters. It doesn't matter if you're the Uncle Rico of video games. Like, that's not the goal, is that you will win or become the best, or this is like the main thing you do together. The point is your child's in that space. So with using video games, I had a mom this conversation of, will you show me what's going on? What's your favorite part about this app? What do all your friends really like to listen to for music? What are all your friends watching? What's your favorite part of this game? Show me. Just let me sit and watch. If it's a video game, you will get motion sick. And if something concerning comes up, you're like, ooh, interesting. So I heard this, right? Like, let's talk about like, what does that claim and is it true? To use a Greg Kukul, I steal one of his phrases, and that's the book Tactics. If you've never read it, it's a delight. It's a quick read. But that's the first piece. Then would you teach me? Like, would you teach me how to do that dance? Right? You don't have to post it on the internet, but like you're doing it and I want to look ridiculous. So like I'm going to embarrass you. This isn't every time they use it. This isn't all the time, but being in their space, understand what makes them tick. No pun intended. That just came out. Or talk was the other half of that. But what is working for them in the space? And then would you do it with me? Right? Like, can we do this thing together? Play this game, watch the show, listen to this music, because you need to be in their space. And yes, like some of the music, you're like, it's just noise. I don't understand. It's like Ross playing that piano in Friends, where it's just sound effects and dogs barking and then a bomb at the end. But that idea being your child has value, they value this space, and that means this officially matters to you. So do be a part of that. I would caution you. I don't know why, and I'm working on a project right now to help explain it, but there's something with dads and video games and kids that we think that entering a state of flow equals quality time with our children. Just because you lost track of time doesn't mean that that was a high value time. And I'm trying to say that lovingly, and I obviously have like a lot of baggage in this area, so like it's very, but like both of the last 2 talks I've done this week, I had people walk up to me with that as their main thing of like, this is the only way my spouse is hanging out with my children, our children. And I just want to, if you find yourself super attracted to a particular area, like you're super into social media too, just be cautious that that might be an area that you will go overboard in. And you may actually have to overinvest in what I'd like to call analog adventures, having fun at the pace of real life, and go, hey, like we both love social media, and let's go on a hike, or let's go do whatever we like to do, build Legos, do whatever the thing is you guys do at the pace of real life. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm still chewing on that conversation for how to do it deliberately and lovingly. Yeah, thank you for the question. Anybody else? Questions? Yeah.
When do you, because you've had talked about conversations with seniors in high school and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and they're basically on the exit road to
Yes.
adulthood, where their phone has no guardrails on it, and they can do whatever you want. So
Sure.
I mean, one of the we're kind of, we have a 16-year-old, and we're working on, maybe we pull off a little guardrail here. At some point, he of course is like, I'm gonna be there sooner than you know. You should just peel off all the guardrails now, sort of thing, you know.
Sure.
But how do you responsibly do that? Because you can't, if you leave all the guardrails on until they're 18, and suddenly they come off, there's just like,
It's like
oh,
that
wow,
Amish
what do I?
Rumspringa.
Yeah, the Rumspringer, exactly. So how do you kind of plan that well?
It's like
So
an Amish
Rumspringer is actually trying to counteract that. They're like, well, if we dose them with enough of it right away, then it'll undo it, which is,
You pay for the phone till they're 28 and 10.
yeah, right. There you go. There's that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of Rumspringer. I don't buy into that. I also don't buy, I have yet to meet a young person who was raised without a smartphone, goes to school, finds a roommate's phone laying around and goes on a bender and drops out because, you know, they woke up in a ditch somewhere and like, who am I? What have I become? What we are seeing is young people going to college and going, oh, the only reason I wanted this thing was because I wanted to belong. But that group isn't here. I'm living my own goals. So I don't even want a smartphone. We're actually seeing 20-somethings go to dumb phones. And they still use social media and they're still engaged, but they use it through their laptop, where they do everything else, or whatever their personal device is, their iPad. I think if your child is asking for the freedom, you give them the freedom he's earning. Like, hey, you absolutely, son, like you're showing yourself faithful every time we ask you to do something with your friends, with your the sleep schedule and your work and your academics and your athletics and your faith walk. Like you are growing and we love you and we want to extend this and take off the boundaries. The way you do that is you get something like a Bark phone and you go, great, I'm releasing this app and that app and this thing. And he goes, oh, but I really want this thing. And you're like, walk me through that. What's happening right now? I'm like, well, all my friends are on there and it's super important to me and it's really, really cool. I'm like, and it's clearly designed to be destructive. Like, I can't allow that. Well, I'm going to get it when I'm 18. That's true. Like, but you're not God. Your job is not to save your child. Your job is to raise him up in the way he should go. And if he has a heart that just wants to make a mistake, at some point he's going to have that freedom. My hope would be he'll turn 18 and go, man, who can I ask to be my accountability partner? Because I don't want to be the only one on the internet. Like I in college craved accountability because I wanted to make decisions, but my brain was wired down a different track. And I had weird habitual loops that, again, 7th grade Nathan still shows up. And I have to have that ability in confessional peace and bringing that before the Lord that I've trained in because I want to be right before the Lord. So my number one thing would be train your child in the admonition and fear of the Lord to see that God is good and that all his rules are loving and they're not here to ruin his good time, and then use those rules accordingly. Have those conversations like, hey, you've absolutely earned all this trust. I want to give you that game and that music and that thing. And you know what? This might be kind of fringe and like you might bump into something hard, but we're going to be here. So when something goes wrong, just know that we'll step in and have the conversation with you and we can talk out, is this good? And if he's like, no, I won't even use a phone if you have accountability on it, then like, okay, well, I can't give you that. Like, yes, when you turn 21, you can buy a loaded weapon too, but I'm not going to give you that right now. Like, we can go shooting together, we can go trap, we can go hunting, like we can do these things, but like, no, I'm not just going to leave you with this thing that can cause a lot of harm to you and others when you're not showing me that you're ready for that. So that's how I would encourage you to think about it. I don't know your child or the history of your past or situation. I will say within my own family, I have 4 sisters, lots of nieces and nephews. I've seen both sides. I've seen the young people doing it great, and I have one particular young person who is just bent on burning life to the ground. And that's really hard to watch. But like, there are loving things we can do. We're still responsible for how we interact with that person and give them all the trust they've earned. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Anybody else? 3 minutes. Okay. I'm here. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll hang out. Thank you for your time. I know it's a late evening on a weekend. You crushed it, and I think you all even stayed awake. Good job. Well done. Everyone on Zoom, thanks for being here. And yeah, this will be recorded and available to people who maybe didn't make it, so you can share that too. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.